I can't stress enough how much joy I get from seeing yet another AAA development studio or CEO open their mouths and saying yet another distasteful comment regarding their game and or their community. Randy Pitchford, CEO of Gearbox, was told on Twitter that he should not price the new Borderlands game at $80. He responded with the following: A, not my call. B, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991. When I was just out of high school working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen. So, okay, I just don't understand why these CEOs and these developers keep opening their mouths on social media when their player trust situation is not that great at this current point in time. I'm not saying they shouldn't, because it makes my day and it just makes my day a whole lot better, and it gives me a reason to write down my thoughts and make a video for you guys. So, I mean, I'm not really complaining, but I just still, time and time again, it happens with another developer or another CEO, and they just don't learn from each other. And it's just so funny to see. And this is just another example of a person self-manipulating their product and setting it out, to be a failure at the end of the day. I just love how gamers are at a point where they take statements like this and just reply with, cool, another game I'm just not going to buy. Or responding with, like, the classic, Pirate Bay image, indicating that they'll play the game, but, they might not get, the funds for it. So, I don't know. It's just funny how we're starting to see a trend in these responses. It's almost like how CEOs, they give like this PR response, or they give a really nasty response, and gamers are now starting to give their own form of PR responses to development studios or CEOs. I just think it's kind of funny that, we're starting to see a trend like that happen. And I just want to take a moment to point out how out of touch Randy is with his statement in general. Being, I bought a game in the 90s while working minimum wage. You can do it for me too. One, the cost of living for daily life in general in 2025 has gone up so much in general. So with your consumers, with their struggles and their stress that you apparently quote unquote relate with, you should price your game at a reasonable amount, excuse me. It shouldn't be, okay, so here's how it should be. If you're a CEO, and if you give us the story of, back in my day, I bought a game for $80 working minimum wage, getting $2 an hour, right? If you're in a CEO position, in my mind, right, how I would see it, and what would make me buy your game is if you're like, yeah, guys, in the 90s, I worked at Baskin Robbins before it was called Baskin Robbins, made minimum wage, took me 2 months to buy one single video game, and, man, yeah, like, I understand the struggle, and I understand it. So what I'm going to do for you guys is, even though the market is increasing its prices, what we're going to do is, we're going to price the game at like $50, deluxe edition, $60, no more, no less. People are going to be like, the response to that, if he would have said that, if that would have been the case, if Borderlands 4 was going to be $50 on release, everybody would have been like, yeah, this guy's the GOAT. We're back. Borderlands is back, baby. Just from that statement alone, you would get way more support and more people that would be proactive and would actually go out and buy your product if you gave a story like that, and or like a reply of a tweet, and then say, I get it. I get the struggle of, middle to lower class American. I understand you guys. I was there at one point in my life. This is my gift to you. I love my fans. I love my people who buy my games. I love my games. $50, but of course that's not gonna happen, right? So, and oh man, the last 3 Borderlands games were not even that well received compared to the first 2 games. Like, a lot of people don't like the last 3 games. Granted, I didn't really either, to be honest. After Borderlands 2, I just kind of, I don't know. Borderlands just kind of got stale with the way that they were taking it. Legendaries were dropping way too fast. A lot of it just felt like it was a lot more bullet spongy for a lot of the bosses, and just a lot of the high-ranking enemies in like the newer games didn't really feel fun. I don't know, man. I just have to be on the side of the people that didn't like the last 3 games. They just weren't that great. And a lot of hardcore fans, they really didn't like them. And that's where you kind of, you're kind of opening the wound for those guys, because you're essentially kicking them while they're down, and they're trying to love you because they've loved your first 2 Borderlands games and they didn't like the last 3. Some people are giving you one final chance, and when you go out and say things like this, it's less likely that they're going to buy the game now. They might not even give you like one last chance. They're just going to say, hey man, fuck you. I'm just not going to buy your game now. And that's just how it is. And like I said earlier, it shouldn't be a surprise that when you make a statement like that, people are going to be out like in uproar and be like, this guy's stupid. But hey, Randy, you can keep doing you, man. Whatever makes you sleep at night. Just know, if Borderlands 4 ends up being an Avowed or a Dragon Age the Veilguard situation, I told you so. A lot of people are going to be saying, I told you so. Some of your developers that work for you might be saying, excuse me, I told you so. So I just, keep that in the back of your mind. Brandy will probably never see this video, but that's just me as a consumer speaking to, a guy that's trying to sell me a product. A part of me kind of wishes that there's a small dev team out there, like an indie dev team, that they're working on their own indie looter shooter at the moment, and they're currently having discussions, and they're like, guys, it'd be fire if we dropped our game around Borderlands 4 release date, and imagine if we would outsell them, right? Like, just a group of guys that are just making an indie looter shooter just for the fun of it. This is like their passion project. They're pouring tons of love into this game, and if they just sat there and were like, let's drop it when Borderlands 4 drops, I will buy that game 100%. If they openly say that too, if they're like, yeah, we just, we thought it would be cool, we thought it'd be funny, just to see how it goes, I would 100% support and buy that game, even if it's, like quality-wise, not, up there. It's made by indie guys. It's not going to be, AAA look-wise, but, it could be better. That would be really cool. But, speaking of indie games, this video wasn't going to be super long. I just kind of wanted to point and laugh at somebody who said something stupid online, which happened to be Randy, in this case, the CEO for Gearbox. So, super short video. I kind of wanted to start doing a segment during some of my videos of listing upcoming indie or AA games that I would rather buy than the cost of one AAA game. Now, some of these games that I'm about to tell you guys don't have a price tag on them yet. It's still like early access, yet to be released or whatever. So I'm just going to assume that they're $20 for the sake of keeping things simple and for the sake of the video. So instead of buying Borderlands 4 this year, this is what I'm going to spend that $80 on that could have went into Borderlands 4 if they, were cool and not pieces of shit. First one being Pelican Harbor. So this is one that I'm really excited for. So Pelican Harbor is a voxel sandbox adventure fishing game with rhythm game mechanics while you're fishing to catch the fish. I like the voxel art style. I'm a really big fan. I loved Cube World when that was first out. The devs dipped out on it, which was unfortunate. Oh my god, excuse me. The devs dipped out on Cube World, which sucked. So it's cool seeing other voxel games coming out. This one is definitely my jam for sure, or it's around my area that I, of games that I would actually really enjoy. Adventure sandbox, you can do whatever the fuck you want. I love fishing games, just to sit back, watch a podcast, listen to music, and I really love rhythm games. That's like my little stick, dude. Like, I love rhythm games. I'm not that great at them, but just the concept of playing a video game and incorporating music into a video game, and you're essentially just listening to music while playing a video game. I know you can do that with literally any other game. But I don't know, man. I love rhythm games. I'm not going to get into that. But Pelican Harbor is definitely one of them that I'm really excited about. Labyrinth of the Demon King is a first-person dungeon crawler survival horror type game that has kind of like that early like PS1, PS2 kind of graphic style aesthetic to it. I actually already bought this game, and I'm going to be making my next video giving my thoughts about this game after I complete it. I haven't even played it yet. I just bought it last night. It was around like 16 bucks, I think. It's already on sale. So really excited to try this one out. Looks pretty interesting. And then Ethra, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right. Ethra is a action-adventure RPG that has a pixelized art style, graphic-wise, but it's played in like a 3D plane. So it's played in like third person. You can move the camera around. So really interesting. I personally haven't seen anything similar to this game. I actually found this game on my YouTube recommended, and it piqued my interest, so I wishlisted the game on Steam, and I'm keeping up. I joined the Discord of the developers, to stay in touch and to keep up with the news about the game to see if we're gonna get like a announcement of a release date anytime soon or anything of the sort. Not saying that I want to play the game right now and I need it to come out now. The devs can take as much time as they need. I would much prefer developers take the time to develop their games and make sure that it's at a state where they're comfortable with selling it to the market, and rather than having it rushed out like most of these AAA games are. So really excited for Ether. It looks really cool. I'm excited to try that one. And then the last one for today is called Beta Decay. Now, this one is a little similar to Labyrinth of the Demon King in terms of art style and kind of the aesthetic that they're going for. So, Beta Decay is a open-world survival game that also has that, similar type of art style. This one is set in a dystopian future with things like factions, mechs, you can build spaceships, there's these futuristic-looking guns in there, kind of like dystopian-looking, cool-looking characters from what I've seen in the trailer. Pretty much everything that has been shown from the trailers of this game has convinced me to at least try it when it launches. It's at least piqued my interest, which is, something that Marathon, that, some of these studios, even from certain trailers, they can pique your interest, but then they immediately disappoint you with like actual gameplay trailers. But Beta Decay doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. It looks pretty interesting. I'll definitely try it out. But yeah, those are, 4 indie games or AA studio games. I'm pretty sure all 4 of these are actually indie games made by either a small dev team or by one person. I know Pelican Harbor is made by one guy, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, 4 games that, that would probably add up to $80 altogether, maybe even less, that I would rather spend that money on than Borderlands 4. I mean, I would rather spend, Borderlands 4, Marathon, Borderlands 4 is the topic of this video, so that's just, the example that I'm using. But anyways, those are 4 games that I'm really excited about. If you guys haven't seen anything on those games, and if those games and the genres of those games pique your interest, I definitely recommend you guys going on Steam, wishlisting them on Steam, checking out their Discord, keeping up with the developers, maybe asking them some questions. I know a lot of the developers, they, for these games specifically Ethra and Pelican Harbor, from my experience, they're pretty in tune with their audience. They're more than happy to answer questions, whether that's on, like Twitter, Discord. I've even seen the developer of Pelican Harbor respond to people on TikTok. He's been posting a lot of development videos on TikTok as well. So highly recommend you guys check it out if any of them pique your interest. But that's pretty much what I had. Oh my god. Today's the day, man. That's pretty much all I've had to say today regarding this whole situation that happened. Sweet and simple, pointing and laughing at Randy, giving my recommendations for some indie games. But I appreciate you guys' time taking the, oh my god. Hey, I cannot talk today. Anyways, I appreciate your guys' time that you took to watch and listen to this video. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Have a fantastic weekend. Spend it with your loved ones. Play some good games. And, I highly encourage people to take some time out of their day to go and explore the market, the gaming market. Maybe find some indie games that pique your interest, wishlist them on Steam, maybe show some support on some social media, tell the developers that they're, doing a fantastic job so far. Their game seems interesting. Give them that little morale boost that, they need. I know developing video games is not hard, or excuse me, is not easy. So, and these guys are just doing it for the love of the craft, man. They have a vision, they want to make their vision, and they want to share it with others. So, anyways, enough of that. I appreciate you guys. Have a good one. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace!